about it. How does COBRA fit into all this? You're all very familiar with how COBRA, group health continuation rules, work, and bottom line, those rules don't change at all, at least not in any obvious way. So there's no effect by the federal health care reform. It doesn't change the COBRA health plan continuation rules. Those are going to continue as they have before. Now, once these exchanges are in place in 2014, I could see that maybe changing how COBRA is actually works in some respects, just because someone at that point may, once they're off the employer's plan, may switch over and get on an exchange plan perhaps, and how that affects COBRA. I assume that would mean that you could stop their COBRA coverage then once they're on an exchange plan, but I'm not sure about that. So at least in terms of what the federal health care law, the way it reads, there's no direct change to any of the COBRA rules. At this point, though, with the next few slides, I want to get into some of the rules that relate to what are referred to by most people as grandfathered plans. That's not the term that's used in the law itself, but on this slide is pretty close summary, or almost word for word, of how the new law defines what a grandfathered plan is. Without using the word grandfathered. Again, that's my word, but it's also the word being used by other people that are explaining the new law and applying the new law. But so for those of you that have group health plans right now for your employees, and I would guess that's most of you in this room, your plans, because there's at least one individual that's enrolled as of the time that the PPACA law was enacted on March 23rd. Your plan will be a grandfathered plan, and that has some significant meaning then in terms of what mandates will apply to you and when those might apply to you, because some of these provisions that we'll be talking about, and we'll try to identify them as we go along, will not be subject to your plan because it's grandfathered, but certain other provisions will be subject. So it'll be whereas if you were to not have a grandfathered plan but have a startup brand new plan, either you're a startup employer or you're an existing employer and you completely trash your old plan and start up with a new plan, your new plan is going to be subject to these mandates, some of these mandates, right from the get-go. So it's going to be important for you as an employer or plan sponsor to know really whether your plan is grandfathered and how long your plan retains that grandfathered status for the next several years anyway, because if it's grandfathered, it may not be subject to some of these mandates, and if it's not grandfathered, it will be subject to some of the mandates. So again, we'll try to identify which ones those are as we go along. One thing that's not clear in the law, but we all assume will be clarified when regulations are issued eventually, is, well, what changes to a grandfathered plan might cause it to lose its grandfathered status. It's clear, in fact, I think there's language in the law right now that says even though you can add employees to a plan and that won't cause it to lose its grandfathered status, you can add dependents and the plan will still be treated as the same plan. But presumably at some point you can, if you radically change a plan, or maybe even not radically, that's where the gray area is right now, is not how radical must your design changes be to cause the plan to lose its grandfathered status. We'll all have to wait and see what the government says in regulations as far as that goes. So, but you can imagine, it might at some point the changes are so radical as to cause it to be treated as a new plan. Also not totally clear is how or when, for collectively bargained plans, for those of you with unions and collective bargaining units, I think the general idea is that the collectively bargained plans won't have to comply, as to the health plans anyway, won't have to comply until, in general, the last of the collective bargaining agreements that relating to that plan expires, so that you can wait for the collective bargaining process to play out in its normal fashion, and then after that term of that current contract expires, then the later contract that plan will then be subject to these new rules. But there's still a fair amount of uncertainty though as to exactly how that will work in the timing of the applicability of some of these mandates to these collectively bargained plans. So if you have collectively bargained plans, you'll need to read up some more and wait for more guidance from the government as to when these rules will apply to that plan. So I thought, even though some of these mandates here are things I or Tim are going to talk about in a little more detail, just for maybe lack of a better place to put them, I went ahead and for the next two slides, this one and the next one, laid out 5 mandates that grandfathered plans are going to still be subject to. I just want to put them out there so you have them in mind, because it's going to affect so many people in this room. Most of you probably have, like I said, grandfathered plans. So I wanted you to already be tuned in as soon as possible here as to what mandates will apply to your plan and when. So really, in terms of when, all of these items listed on this slide and the next one are going to be effective to your plan for as of the beginning of the plan year that begins on or after September 23rd of 2010. So September 23rd may seem like a funny date, but that's 6 months from the time the PPACA law was passed on March 23rd. So there's a 6-month delay, and then from there a further delay until whatever the first plan year start is. So it's not going to start, literally on September 23rd. If your plan is on a calendar year, your health plan is on a calendar year basis, then we're talking January 1st of 2010. If your plan is on a November 1st to October 31 kind of a year, then November 1st of 2010 will be the first plan year start after this September 23rd, 2010 date. So if you go back and look at that handout A, the first page again, that kind of lays out the timeline. That's where it's really the third row on that timeline. The third row, it says effective plan years beginning on or after September 23rd, 2010, and it has a whole bunch of things in there, mandates. Most of those mandates in there are going to apply to grandfathered plans, but not all of them. And so on this chart, actually, there are 2 asterisks by the ones that says the grandfathering. When they say on that chart grandfathering applies, it means that particular mandate does not apply to a grandfathered plan. So it may be a little confusing the way it's written, but if you don't see the 2 asterisks, like the no lifetime limits there, for example, on that chart, the first in that first column, the third row, no lifetime limits, because there's no asterisks by that, no 2 asterisks anyway, it means that even a grandfathered plan will, as of that date, first plan year after September 23rd, will be subject to that mandate. Likewise, for adult children coverage, we'll talk about these mandates a little bit more, but I just wanted to kind of, again, clue you into which mandates you should be paying more attention to now with regard to your grandfathered plan, and which mandates can you kind of ignore for now because you've got information overload and you can only learn so much at one time. You can think about the other ones later on. So the ones that you're going to need to think about sooner are these ones on this slide and the next one, and I'll just walk through those briefly.